So it was about 10, maybe 11 years ago that Hyundai, great warranties, but they learned a very important lesson. You see, to sell cars, it was all about design. Now, fast forward to today, and the world, it's definitely changed, so now we have a new question. Can design sell cars with an electric propulsion system that aren't made in either Fremont, California, or Berlin, Germany? Now that we have that out of the way, let's understand the propulsion system. And here, you will not be surprised to learn that there are two flavors on offer, a two-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive. What is surprising? The two-wheel drive is going to be rear drive. Now, I spoke to some of the engineers when I was driving this vehicle, and I asked them why did they do that. Now, I'm not complaining because I want a rear drive vehicle, but I wanted to know why an engineer would make that decision, and I got two answers. The first answer was more technical. It has to do with recuperating energy from the brakes and the wheels as the car is coasting. That's easier and more efficient to do it in the front of the vehicle because the motor in the front or the cars without the motor in the front have less drag on the overall vehicle. Now the second answer, and this one I think I like a bit better, it's because Albert Biermann wanted a rear drive electric vehicle. Okay, now that we understand all that, let's focus on the output figures, starting with the rear motor. The basic one, not the most basic one, will have a 168 kilowatt motor, which translates to 225 horsepower. But they just announced there will be one with a smaller battery pack with a lower horsepower rear motor. That's going to be about 168 horsepower. Now, going back to the 225 horsepower, that translates to about 258 pound-feet of torque. Now we get to the all-wheel drive model, which is the one you and I are going to drive. It's not the same motor in the back. It's tuned a little bit differently. It's 165 kilowatts, which translates to 221 horsepower. Now the front motor, that's 74 kilowatts, which translates to about 99 horsepower. Total system torque there will be 446, but total system horsepower will be 320. Okay, now that we have the electric motors out of the way, let's understand what powers them, and that would be two different battery options. They just announced a lower range battery. That's the one with the lower horsepower motor in the rear, the 168 horsepower. That's gonna have a 58 kilowatt hour battery. That's just been rated by the US EPA for 220 miles. The rest of them, whether they're rear drive or all-wheel drive, will have a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery. That translates to, in the all-wheel drive, the car we are driving today, 256 miles of EPA range, or in the rear drive, 303 miles of EPA range. Now, something interesting about the battery, at least the one that's 77.4 kilowatt hours, that one weighs 1,049 pounds. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, 0 to 60 on this, it's actually not terrible. It's 5.1 seconds to 60 in the car we are driving, the all-wheel drive. In terms of VMAX, no matter what it is, it's pretty much limited to 115 miles an hour. Now, for those of you that are familiar with this show, you know this is the point of the episode where we cut to me driving the car. But before we do that, we need to discuss the second most important aspect of this vehicle. Yes, second to design, and that would be the 800-volt architecture. Now, of course, I could go on and on and on in nauseating detail about the scientific and technical benefits of 800-volt architecture. I did that in many Porsche Taycan episodes, and you can go check those out. Instead, this being a Hyundai, we're going to focus on the main benefit, and that is much faster charging. Like, for example, if you were to find the right charger, which they are hard to find, you can charge this thing from nothing to 80% in 18 minutes. That's on par with a Porsche Taycan. So now that we understand that, let's drive the car. 4,662 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 2,114 kilograms. If this was not the all-wheel drive limited with all the stuff in it, it would be 462 pounds lighter. Put another way, about 10% reduction in weight. With that, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. This is not quite the road. This is quick. I didn't expect that at all. Let's go back down to eco mode and try that acceleration trick again. There is no one behind us, and actually there's no one on this road at all. So here we go, eco mode. Oh yeah, it's a very different experience. You are basically losing all of the 100 horsepower from the front motor, and it is a noticeable difference. It's kind of what you'd expect in terms of acceleration. Now that you and I understand the propulsion system, let's focus on the headline. And here, it's not at all what we expected. This does not drive like a crossover. It doesn't even drive like a sporty crossover. It drives like a luxury car. And to understand that, let's understand what's underneath the vehicle. So up front, it's McPherson struts. In the rear, it's a multi-link unit. And no, there are no adjustable dampers. So as we switch drive modes between eco, normal, and sport, there is no adjustment to the damper. So there is a little pitch as we drive a little bit more aggressively around turns here, because remember, it may not drive like a crossover, but it is a crossover in terms of at least height. So let's look at that in a bit of a different light. The steering, the weight, the feedback, and how direct it is that of a rear-wheel drive vehicle. That's kind of the surprise. Then there's the ride quality, and here it's what you'd expect from a vehicle of this size and weight. Yet there is a counterbalance to that, if you could call it that, and that's the choice of wheel sizing. So in the basic vehicle, it's 19 inches. In this fancy limited, it's 20 inches. So it's not like this far over to the luxury car spectrum. You do feel the road a bit more in the vehicle with the 20-inch wheels. And then there's the brakes. And this is a big switch from the Volkswagen ID.4. Here, there's smaller discs. So it's 12.8 in the front, 12.8 in the rear. But they're discs in the rear. In Volkswagen, they made a very odd choice by putting drums back there. There just isn't enough stopping power, even in a vehicle that has a one-pedal driving mode. This one, they made the right decision to put disc brakes in the back, because at the end of the day, this thing is still, what, almost 5,000 pounds, and you do need some stopping power. Here, the braking performance, it kind of matches what this vehicle can do in terms of acceleration, but more importantly, it keeps the vehicle composed under hard braking. That's something other EVs don't always do. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Options game, with today's contestant, one of the most important designs in the history of the Hyundai Kia group. I would argue more important than the 2011 Hyundai Elantra or the 2010 Hyundai Sonata. This, the 2022 Hyundai IONIQ 5. Now, there are a couple different flavors here. The one we are driving is the most expensive at $54,500. That is the limited all-wheel drive. So limited, what does it add? It adds things like that fancy glass roof, some better stuff on the inside, the wheels are a bit bigger, that kind of stuff. But that's not the cheapest one. The cheapest one is the one with the 58 kilowatt hour battery. That one is $39,700, only 220 miles of range. But let's say for the sake of discussion, we wanted one with just the rear drive that has the standard battery, the 77.4 kilowatt hour battery, $43,650. If we wanted a limited two-wheel drive, $50,600. Now, before we close out this round of the game, I do need to make mention of the color choices. Why? Because there are only 6 on offer and none of them are particularly good. I chose the blue because, well, blue is my favorite color, but it's not a particularly good blue. And here's my quarrel. This is a great design. It needs great color choices that are bold. Something like a high contrast red with a saddle interior. Yeah, there's a white and there's a silver and there's like a matte gray, which is okay, but they're kind of missing the boat here. Think of this as like a preemptive wish list. We need better colors because the design is that good. Either way, one must add $1,225 for destination handling for a total retail price of the car we are driving, $55,625. Okay, so now it's time for you and I to focus on why this thing is special, and here's a hint. It's not because of the propulsion system. There are 2 things going on here. Number 1, the very unique design, and number 2, the proportions, the packaging of this vehicle. Let's start with the packaging. This has the wheelbase of a Ford Explorer. You put this next to a Ford Explorer, the Ford Explorer will absolutely dwarf this thing. But in terms of the overall length, it's closer to that of like a RAV4, which is a trick other EV manufacturers are doing, but not every one of them. Like, for example, the Volkswagen doesn't do that. And this is one of the reasons why EV is important here, not so much from the propulsion system, but the packaging of people. Then there's the design. And on the inside, it is very much an extension of how unique it is on the outside. I don't say this lightly. This is to another level, at least in terms of tactile feel and execution of the designer's vision. Everything you touch feels like a Lexus. There are some Genesis that don't have interior fitment that's this good. I don't know if it's just Hyundai's trying to do something different in the EV world. Whatever it is, it's incredibly noticeable. Now that's the good news. The bad news is there are only, 3 colors of interior on offer. All of them are not great. I'd love to see like a saddle or a tan or something like that, or even something bold like a red. And then there's the UX design. Here, for the most part, it's good. Like, it's got all of the usual types of inputs, the toggle switches, knobs that Hyundais are known for. But like the Kia Sportage we looked at, they're making some changes here. It's got the haptic feedback, and while it looks lovely and that's what the kids coming out of Teslas want, this is not great. Like, here I am trying to go down a narrow road looking at a beautiful vista, and I want to adjust my temperature. I've got to look down here to do that. Now, before I lodge the next complaint about UX design, a friendly reminder: I was hit by a Tesla as a pedestrian because someone was doing this with the screen. So sadly, I have a lot of standing in this area. Let me demonstrate something that would take your eyes off the road. It's cold out today. It's like 45 degrees here in California. I wanted to turn the seat heater on. It's not here, it's not here, it's not here. I've got to go into here. I've got to go down to here. And notice, I'm drifting. And that's where I got to turn the seat heater on or the seat cooler. This, not good. This is not a good direction and takes away from an otherwise wonderful design ethos in this car. And while we're talking about paying attention, Hyundai makes a huge stink that this comes with all of the modern day driver's aids fitted as standard, like lane keep assist, all that kind of stuff, which is good news. However, if there's like a sensitivity meter, they turned it way up. It is way too intrusive. The first thing I had to do when I got this car, also buried in the menu, I had to turn it off. And it changes the way the car drives. So, little feedback. Can we dial that down a bit? Love the idea that it's there. Let's just dial it down a bit. And then a unique little trick they do here. Notice, it doesn't say Hyundai anywhere in this vehicle. That is a trick they stole from Oldsmobile back in the day when they made a huge departure with something called the Aurora. So does that mean this is the modern day Aurora? Let's go back to the question from the top of the episode. In fact, let's modify it. Will this design sell cars that have electric propulsion systems that are not made in either Fremont, California or Berlin, Germany? And here I would say absolutely yes. In fact, I am a huge fan of this thing. Yes, I'm a little bit biased about the design, but it's more than the design. It's the design, the packaging, and absolutely that 800-volt architecture. The fact that it's in a vehicle that is not a $100,000 Porsche, that is a big deal. Then go back to the way it looks and the way it drives, the fact that it doesn't drive like a golf cart, that is something that stands out. However, not everything is puppy dogs and roses in this equation. And to understand that statement, we need to press on to the wish list and recount a conversation I had with the product manager of this vehicle before the pricing was announced. I was very clear. The pricing needed to be at a certain point. Then the pricing was announced, which we discussed in the options game. And there's no nice way to say this. At every price point, this is $5,000 too expensive. Now, I say that for 2 reasons. A, yes, it is too close in price to a Tesla. And when people are thinking, oh my God, I want an electric car, and the price is even near a Tesla, they're going to buy the Tesla, no matter how cool this looks. But then there's the other more important reason. I told that product manager, and this really is an open letter to any car manufacturer, get off the crack of the federal tax credit rebate, whatever the hell actually, it's not a rebate. It's a credit. It's not money that comes back to you as a discount. Very few people qualify for this. Very few people will actually get it because less and less people are able to itemize their deductions. I'm going to be doing an episode just on this topic. But here's the problem with it. It is charity for rich people. And the point of this vehicle is to sell electric cars to people who aren't rich. So don't bring in the whole $7,500 tax credit and the rebates. The rebates maybe, but this needed to be $35,000 to start. even the one with 58 kilowatt hour battery. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox here and say just this: amazing car, an incredible game changer for the company that made it. It is just $5,000 too expensive. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And yes, I would love to ask your help with the algorithm, but frankly, it just pisses me off too much. So if you are not getting notifications of this show on YouTube, then you know what? Unsubscribe, resubscribe, and follow us on all our socials, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until I see you in the next episode, Bish Beta.